This is A World on Purpose.
A purposeful life is the most important kind and the most valuable kind of life.
Every choice that we make makes a difference, for better or worse.
I loved walking in a village and seeing the before and after.
This is the podcast dedicated to those humans choosing to live larger by working for the greater good. And these are their stories. Stories of hope and of true change that come from living on purpose.
What if you were to suddenly say there are no challenges, there are only opportunities?
Regardless of where you come from, your financial identity should determine where you end up in life.
I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and my hope is that my inspiring guests will take you on an introspective journey that helps you tap into your own pivot to purpose, bringing greater meaning to your life. Welcome to A World on Purpose. John Stix is co-founder of Fibernetics, Canada's top award-winning workplace culture company and telecommunications innovator, and here he tells his story of hitting the wall. Having built his dream company and then finding that he didn't want to be there, listen to him share the compelling story about a set of circumstances that changed his life and inspired his journey to transform his company and himself into a workplace innovation giant that empowers his employees to dream big. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A World on Purpose, your amazing podcast all about purpose. I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, as you know. On A World on Purpose, we love to bring you incredible guests that give you amazing, insightful information on how to cultivate, find, and facilitate your purpose. And today is no exception. I am very excited to have my guest with me today, Mr. John Stix, who I'm going to be introducing to you in a minute. John is a pretty incredible person and has an amazing story. He's a co-founder and executive at Fibernetics, which is a very successful 20-year-old Canadian company. And he'll give you a little bit about that background. And then he's also the creator of something really unique that I think all of you are going to find incredibly powerful to your own personal development. And it's called Discover Your Who. He published a book in 2019. And he's turning that also into an interactive digital curriculum that he's going to share with us about today. So John, welcome to A World on Purpose, and thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure to be here. What a fantastic topic, and I'm excited to be having this dialogue with you, Alyssa. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm thrilled that you're here. I would love to start, the way I always start the first segment of a 3-part series, as we discussed, is really to give people the idea around what I call your pivot to purpose, kind of that aha moment in your life when you realized, I don't want to be just about profit. I want to be about profit and purpose, and how I can leverage my talents and my skill sets and my knowledge to really channeling towards a purpose-driven life. And so I would love it if you would please share your incredible story that you shared with me that I know everyone's going to want to hear and just eat up. So please tell us about your origin story and your pivot to purpose.
Yeah, thanks. I love the description, pivot towards purpose, pivot toward purpose. For me, it was one of the biggest changes in my life. And, when it did happen, which I'll describe, I knew I was never going to be the same person ever again. And I was excited about the path that happened for me quite quickly. And, you bring up shareholder value and revenue, and there's these stigmas that we wear as leaders, and there's these benchmarks that we're taught that we must hit. And of course, you have to have healthy revenue or you can't support your dream. But there's certainly much, much more. And for me, it all started back in 1994 when in Canada here, we went through deregulation in the telecommunications industry. So the market opened up. It's not near as open even to this day as that you would enjoy in the United States. But here in Canada, it did open up in 1994. And up until that point in time, I guess I was known with my best friend, his name's Jody, as two guys that were always, up to something in high school, trying the new idea. And, why aren't these guys getting normal part-time jobs? So I suppose that we would have had the label very early on as entrepreneurs. We just didn't know we were entrepreneurs. We just wanted to hang out with each other. So we tried a bunch of different things when we were very young. When in 94, when deregulation did indeed open up, we threw our hats in the ring. We had absolutely no experience in telecommunications. We both were in school for something completely separate and different. But we just wanted to hold on to a dream that we had. And early on, that dream was that we were two best friends that wanted to hang out with each other, that believed that there was something more. And the dream was just us enjoying life. And that's all the dream that we had at that point in time. And so we dove into telecommunications in our own unique way in 1994 and failed, I think probably, listen, maybe 4 or 5 times. and then the 6th time we opened up another venture. And, after trying very, very hard and again, failing, I call failure really you're stepping forward and then you're just learning. So it's not really failure at all. You're just progressing. We hit it and we found our niche. And we grew very, very, very fast over the next decade or more. And all of a sudden, it wasn't just 2 of us. All of a sudden, it wasn't just 4 or 5 of us. And we outgrew our basement. Funny little story that I'll be very quick on is I remember we were hiring people and we were working out of our house because we lived together, shared our costs because we had to. And I remember people, would not always show up for their interviews. And later on, I realized, well, they were driving into a Crescent to go to a home, right? So, but the ones that did come in for the interview, we welcomed with open arms, and they became great members of our team. And so we grabbed market share quite quickly in a very difficult market share in Canada to do. And, a decade later, we built out a national infrastructure, became a national phone and internet company with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of customers. We were very disruptive in the industry, built it with my best friend, had key relationships that we developed. Obviously, other family members joined us. And it all started from just a dream of wanting to make a difference, and what we thought that we could create would be good. And in an industry in Canada here in telecommunications, it was very high cost for consumers. So there was a lot of opportunity to deliver high value. And so we concentrated on that. And for many years, it felt like there was a great balance between profitability, fun, excitement, challenge, purpose-driven business, and really culture. Back then, we didn't even know what we didn't even know what workplace culture or the term was. It was just, a bunch of people going out hypothetically on a Thursday night for a Guinness at the local pub and talking about dreams and what we wanted to do and how we could make a difference. Mm. And so we really rode that wave for a long time, Alyssa. And, but about 8 years ago, I hit a pretty substantial wall personally, and I couldn't figure out. The odd thing with this one is I couldn't figure out what the wall was. Like sometimes we hear from our friends or we listen to podcasts like this, and or we watch videos online, and it's people that hit this really big wall and they can't go forward. Some event happens in their life. For me, I couldn't put my finger on it. We accomplished our dreams. I was very blessed in many different ways, but I felt very disengaged from the very dream that I helped create. Mm. And it got to the point where I actually put my hand on the very front door of the business of one of our buildings, and I just let go. And I went back into my car, and I lowered the seat, turned the music up, and I was like, what's wrong with me? Mm. Here I am in the very dream that I helped create with my best friend, beautiful relationships. We've done the things that we've dreamt of. We've come from a basement where we had one blazer, one pair of dress shoes. We couldn't even go to the same business meeting together. Hmm. And here we are all these years later, and our dreams have come true in so many different ways, but I didn't want to be there anymore. That started to creep into the business, and I was probably blind from the perspective of that it had been creeping into it for a while. And I was probably also blind from the perspective that it was creeping into me for a while. And so it was also in my personal life. And I remember one day just saying to myself, who's John? Like, who am I?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
I don't even know who I am. And recently, I gave a talk at a Dreamer Festival, a great festival, to 10,000 people, and it was about re-engaging with dreaming again. And I remember back then, I was like, I don't know who I am, because everything that I poured into the business, Alyssa, the business became my identity. Mm-hmm. Like Fibernetics was me, and I was Fibernetics. And so when something not positive happened, everything of who I am was tied up into that organization. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know that. I can connect the dots obviously later on. But what I did decide in that very moment was I needed to be open. I needed to open myself up to the possibility that there's more of these amazing moments of gratitude, that there are more moments of feeling purposeful again. And that led me to this one time when I was in the back of my home, and I was looking in, and my wife was, we were cooking dinner together, and she was chopping vegetables, and I was up facing the barbecue, and there's these beautiful maple trees here in Canada. We love the Canadian maples, and they're off in the distance. And I remember looking at them. It was a beautiful summer day, and there was this kind of wind that, when the wind hits the canopy of the trees and they're swaying. And this time was different. And I know that I had been asking myself, is there more? There's got to be more. When there's more, there needs to be more of these moments of gratitude. Why am I not connected? And then I heard this voice inside me that says, it was like it reverberated right through my whole body. John, there is more. Mm-hmm. And shortly thereafter, I ended up taking a trip to Vancouver. And that trip was to be for business. And what happened to me was, over a 4-day period, there's a set of circumstances that permanently changed my life. I never knew I was going to be the same person ever again. They were beautiful, amazing, surreal. My mind battled with the fact that they were true or real. They were that transformational. And then I came home, and I remembered on the plane ride back that I had forgotten something, and I just genuinely love people.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But I've never led that way before. Mm. I up until that point in time, I would have been a guy that, a leader that was recognized as, or identified as, hard to approach, standoffish, probably materialistic, and self-centered. That was nice at times. I don't know. I really don't know, because it was such a small group of people that I allowed myself to be around. And it wasn't intentional. And that's what I've learned from a lot of this, Alyssa, is that in our formative years, there's scar tissue that happens due to certain traumas that we all experience. And for me, it was this abandonment that I went through when I was very young. And that created an adaptation. We're in survival mode, and that adaptation created a scar tissue, and that scar tissue created habits of just who I am. And at that point in time, I just remembered that I'd never led my business that way. I'd never really led my life fully that way. The people that were closest to me, like my wife and my best friend, saw that in me. Mm-hmm. And I just decided that I was going to do that. And so, to make a very long story short, I decided to lead my company that way, not from here, but from here. And I just started to lead from my heart and go with what I thought was really true. And I remember going to our leadership team and saying things like, the statement, "Don't take it personal, it's just business," will never come from our lips ever again.
I love that.
Right?
That's great.
And, we went from a toxic culture to winning best HR brand in the entire country, any classification of company in Canada a year later.
Yeah, we'll dive a little bit deeper into segment 2 about some of the actual measurable results in your own culture that you achieved by changing from this mindset of mind, heart over mind. That's a beautiful story, John. And I think what I love about it so much is that you're a man sharing this story. It's a lot easier, I think, for women to come from that place of courageous vulnerability. And I would absolutely love for us in this show, the whole series, to dive a little bit into, I think you said your target audience for Discover Your Who is men. So I want to touch on that in a little bit, but I want to ask you a couple questions about your origin story, which I find so remarkable. What do you think it was about that day when you reached for that doorknob that you felt that difference as opposed to any other day that you went into that same building?
Yeah, great question. I've never been asked that before. Yeah,
hard questions.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
When I look back, there was certainly this unrest that was inside me. It was a thirst for more that had been, going on for quite some time. So your question's very relevant. I think the fact that my thoughts were now manifesting in a visible action where I just didn't go in, or where I just let go, and where I actually, I made a conscious decision that there was separation, that I wasn't going to go into my office and just be disengaged, right? That I turned around and went back to my car. Mm-hmm. I think that was a moment of big change for me because I physically walked away.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that I didn't love it. It wasn't that I felt differently about any of the people in there. There was just an unrest inside me.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I realized that I needed to connect with what matters to me as an individual and who I am before I can lead the company of my dreams again. And
So
I
powerful.
think that was it.
Do you think that you said that those closest to you, had they said anything to you that triggered this realization over time, like little hints dropping here and there about, hey, John, you're not as approachable as you used to be, or what's going on with you, or did it literally really come from within?
Yeah, it really came from within. When I say that, I mean that they saw something in me that I wasn't willing to reveal to others.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I had a best friend since I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
How lucky, right? He's like a brother today and best friend. Of course, my wife from very early on. And, they just saw something in me that I wasn't willing or courageous enough or brave enough or just not ready. How about that? Just not ready.
Or, yeah. Mm-hmm.
To see myself, to see for myself. And, where lies these scar tissues, and I call them, or our pains. I also generally find lies our most amazing hidden talents. Like our potential literally lies within these places that we're scared to go.
Mm-hmm.
I call them seeds of purpose. And when we go in there and we start to really ask ourselves these questions of what matters to us as individuals and start releasing that into the world. And the world could be just, your spouse or your best friend or whomever you feel comfortable and safe enough to do that initially.
Right.
But as you start to do that, you free yourself to be who you authentically are. And then what I found is inevitably, the deeper you go, the more of these kind of hidden seeds of purpose are lying within all of us.
That is a great place for us to, I can't believe how fast part 2 went of our part 3 series, but that's a great place for us to wrap, because we are going to dive into what you created out of this amazing origin story with Discover Your Who. And you're obviously still very much involved with Fibernetics, clearly, but how you've been able to marry a company you built with what you love, as far as creating this incredible platform for personal development for people to discover their who, which it sounds like you did in this experience. So before we wrap part 1 of the 3-part series with you, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, for sure. Right now, the best location to find me is discoveryouwho.com, just how it sounds. I'm also available on LinkedIn. Not on some of the more typical social media because of the platform that you've spoken about that we'll get into a little bit later on. But yeah, if you want to reach out, I encourage you to go to discoveryouwho.com right now.
Great. And they can email you there as well?
Yeah, for sure.
Terrific. Okay. Well, John, thank you for sharing that incredible origin story. I can't wait to come back and hear the rest of it in parts 2 and 3. So everyone, thank you so much for listening to John Stix with Discover Your Who in part 1 of his 3-part series here in A World on Purpose. I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and we will be back. So do not forget to come back and listen, because the rest is going to amaze you. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Alyssa.
We will see you in part 2 and 3. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to A World on Purpose. I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and this is part 2 of the 3-part series with my wonderful, wonderful, insightful guest, John Stix, who is the co-founder of Fibernetics and the amazing creator behind this incredible book and platform called Discover Your Who. In part 1, we got to dive into John's amazing origin story and what the real impetus and inspiration was behind him designing this incredible platform and book that we're going to talk about in a minute. So John, welcome back to A World on Purpose.
I loved part 1, and I'm excited to get going on this again.
Yeah, me too. So I want to really get deep in the weeds on Discover Your Who for sure, but I'd love to just talk a little bit about one of the things we like to talk about here on A World on Purpose is kind of the impact that you're making with the work that you're doing, not just your own pivot to purpose and why you were inspired to live a purpose-driven life, but sort of what it is also that you're actually doing tangibly to make a difference in people's lives. So before we go and discover your who specifically, I know that out of the development of that, you were able to actually create this incredible transformational culture that not only impacted your whole company from a human development standpoint, but also like literally affected your ROI from what I understand. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that for people who are in business and might be thinking about how it is that they can make these transformations and apply it to their own business and their own company culture.
Sure. I like to say to everyone that's willing to listen, if you're a leader that cares for your employees and you're not showing it, and you've been sitting on the fence wondering if you should or not, or that there's an investment, what's the ROI? Don't wait another day. Do it right away. And if you're a leader that, I don't like to frame it this way, but doesn't care, do it anyway, because your ROI will be so amazing. Yeah, when we dove into empowerment and when we dove and committed into leading from our hearts and really listening, and that's the key to it, is listening, right? A quick little story is I remember before we dove into culture, there was a couple departments that were doing incredibly well in our company, and I thought, I'm going to reward these two departments with box seats at a hockey game, right? And here in Canada, it's hockey.
That's a big deal.
So it's a big deal.
Huh.
And so the next Monday, I found out only 6 people showed up, and I was like, "Well, why would only 6 people show up?" And I actually felt disappointed. I felt like, "How could you? We've got these box seats." And then I remember walking to my office, and I remember going, "Hey, dummy, maybe not everyone likes hockey." Right? Or maybe they couldn't get a babysitter, or maybe it just didn't work for them. So, and I think as leaders, that's the way we kind of function is that we're making decisions so quickly that we just, we get into a habit of doing that and we don't listen. So we move to deeply listen. I first started with the leadership team, and then we moved as a collective group and listening to the organization to what really, really matters, just like I was doing for myself. And what came from that is really, in a lot of cases, small changes that added up over time to be a lot. And you're right. We went from what I guess people would describe as a toxic, high-pressure technology culture to winning best HR brand in the entire country for any size or classification company in 1 year. Wow. And for your listeners out there, here are some of the KPIs. We didn't have a conflict resolution in 4 months from the time we made the change. HR concerns dropped 84% in 3 months. Our growth of our company was really at an all-time low at 9%. We finished the year at 50.
Wow.
Yeah. And people were way healthier. We actually finished 4th in a global fit challenge with our company in terms of wellness and fitness. And then there was this incredible impact into our community where we started these homegrown charities, Backpack for Kids in the Dominican Republic, Bears and Bunnies in the hospitals. And it was just, the list goes on. It was just such an incredible transformation for all of us.
And how many employees do you have now at Fibernetics?
Yeah, we ebb and flow between a couple hundred.
Wow, that's quite a large number to have that dramatic of an impact on the actual employee.
Yeah, it was, and we're built for scale, and so and we're also located in different offices. In fact, there's a big office internationally as well. So this culture strategies and implementations had to have multiple office and different culture that were involved. Like in the Dominican Republic, we have an office there.
Well, that's even more applicable to what we're dealing with right now in the world with obviously the COVID crisis. Now that these companies that used to have giant offices with everyone showing up to work in person are having to deal with the remote workplace, and how are we going to kind of maintain that company culture while we're so far apart? And so it sounds like you're a really great example of how companies could achieve that. Thank you for sharing that information. I think it's really powerful, because it's one thing for a company to hear, oh yeah, we're going to do great things and we want to do good for our people and we want to, think about wellness and all that stuff. But when they hear about the actual metrics as a result, I think it makes a difference in the way that they lead. And I love that you mentioned leaders who care, because I have a business partner who heads up, as you know, a search division of one of the companies I'm involved with, or the company that I'm involved with. And his whole philosophy is around leaders who care, and how leaders who care are the ones who really make the difference in the workplace and in the lives of people exponentially outside the company too. So I think it's great that you mentioned that. So when you started doing some of these things, didn't you also expand even further into your company culture around offering a venture fund that helped fund really great ideas from people with inside the company? I would love to hear more about that, because I think that's really cool.
Yeah, part of us really actively listening and making a number of changes. One of them was actually from my business partner. He had a good idea, and it was for us to create something called the Seedling Initiative. And so when I heard it, I got right behind it, and I thought this would be great as part of the overall culture strategy. And so what our Seedling Initiative is we emailed all of our employees, and we said, look, you're in a safe place. If you've ever dreamt about being an entrepreneur and owning your own business, but you've held that dream down because, hey, you got bills to pay and you have a paycheck and you're potentially fearful that you might lose that. First off, you're not going to lose it. And second of all, come to us. And if we think your idea could be a great business, we'll put the money and people around your dream to help you turn it into a business. And so there was a couple principles there. One was, if someone's dreaming about chasing their dream, like if they're thinking about chasing their dream, then they're slightly disengaged from their work and they're being held back from that dream. Well, one, we want to enable it. And two, we don't want to lose that person if they're a great employee and teammate, right? So, it's a great retention tool. It's a great retention strategy. But it also, what we could never have imagined was the amount of innovation and growth that occurred from it. So we started it in quite a small office in one of our buildings. And we ended up having to buy a whole separate building, a 25,000 square foot building, just to hold our seedlings.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And one of them was this great one seedling. I'd give an example was someone wanted to protect kids. One of our staff members wanted to protect kids. We're a phone company, internet company. So often, it's the phone companies that, are asked by police forces around the world to track down IP addresses, call detail records, things like that as part of their investigations. It doesn't take a lot of thought to realize that a portion of those are around kids. So his inspiration was, why aren't we doing something about it? Because that's the culture that we breed is, if we want to see the change in the world, let's be that change. So how do we enable that? Mm-hmm. And then he thought of an idea to protect kids. We all got around it. We launched this little device the size of an air freshener that you could plug into any electrical outlet. And it works with any internet connection in the world at the time. And it was just supposed to protect kids locally for parents. And it ended up taking us all the way to Rome, meeting with Pope Francis, and being one of 150 leaders to create a declaration to protect children in the digital era that Pope Francis signed. So that would never have happened,
right?
If we wouldn't have enabled someone's dream,
right?
And it's just incredible. There's so many stories to it. Yeah, in fact, recently one of our seedlings just surpassed a huge milestone. They're upwards of a third of our entire revenue compared to our actual whole company now.
Wow.
Just themselves.
That's outstanding.
Amazing.
I think it speaks so highly to the way you and your co-founder think around encouraging employees to think just outside of their own company box. It's often seen as a negative when when an employee wants to have something that they're passionate about on the side. But for you guys to actually cultivate that and encourage it and fund it, I think is extraordinarily unique and speaks highly to the way that you see employees as not just one-dimensional, but multidimensional.
Well, I love that. And if I may, I really believe in my heart of hearts that leaders create other leaders. Mm-hmm. And so, why can't entrepreneurs help create other entrepreneurs? And, why can't someone why can't someone be enabled to act on their dream in a structured environment, help guide the entire organization towards its dream? Right. For a long time, I felt, for lack of a better description, the epitome of workplace culture is when you can take a group of people and you can align and they feel safe enough to express what their personal dreams are, what they feel like is their purpose that's unleashed yet. And then have it intertwined with the company's purpose.
Absolutely.
And when you can do that, you don't have to measure engagement anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Hallelujah to that.
You don't.
Wow. I just think that speaks volumes to the way that you have had this incredible journey. I mean, it sounds like you started the company from the place of purpose anyway, wanting to create a more affordable telecommunications offering.
Yeah.
And it's just exploded into this incredible pathway that has not only benefited your first love, which is Fibernetics and your company and everyone inside of it, including yourself, but has segued into this incredible platform that we're now going to dive into in part 3 called Discover Your Who. And I'm really excited to get into that, but I really appreciate you talking about the impact you made on your company, because you are like living proof of what you just said you do for your own employees too. You had a side dream and a side mission, and you're doing it all. And
it can be in harmony. It can be in harmony.
Right. It can be in harmony. It doesn't have to be segmented or separate. And I think people will be very excited to hear about these innovations that you've done. Do you have a website where people can see some of the innovations your employees have, or is it all internal?
Yeah, it's all internal. We keep it, kind of consolidated. But if you want to find out more about, Fibernetics itself, there's some elements on that site. You can just go to fibernetics.ca, and it's FIBERNETICS.ca. And we'd love for you to visit our website and see what you can find.
Great. And I suppose, too, before we dive into the Discover Your Who, which is really kind of like your next trajectory, that if any business leaders out there who are looking to kind of shift their company culture and sort of what they're doing, you'll be able to be a person they can look to for that kind of support through this new platform that you're creating, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I love it because recently I said to some friends of mine, including my best friend Jody, I said, culture is this thing that has been created, this term. And the way I look at it is you either are leading or you're not. And you're either leading in a way that creates this amazing culture, or you're not leading in that way and you won't have it. It's not something that you get to just kind of pick up and give to someone else in your organization.
Right.
It's
brilliant.
You have to have that accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I wouldn't have had it unless I would have taken this journey inside myself to discover who I really am.
That is the perfect place for us to stop and wrap. Boy, you're good, John Stix.
Okay.
That's the perfect place for us to wrap part 2 of this amazing 3-part series that we're doing with you, John Stix from Fibernetics and Discover Your Who. Before we wrap this one segment, why don't you tell people where they can find you quickly?
Yeah, so we welcome you to come to our website. It's at discoveryourwho.com. You can also find me if you want. Personally, reach out on LinkedIn. And we'll also be releasing, as part of Discover Your Who, a whole platform soon where it'll be much more accessible to get to our content.
Terrific. And you'll also be able to find John and all of his information on our website at aworldonpurpose.com. Thank you so much for listening to part 2 of our part 3 series with John. We're so excited, and we're going to come back with part 3 because this is the real nitty gritty of what he's working on. So please tune in to part 3 with John Stix. We're going to dive into the Discover Your Who. And thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and come on back to A World on Purpose. Hello, and thank you for coming back to A World on Purpose. I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and I am here with Mr. John Stix, founder of Fibernetics, and the new incredible platform and book he has called Discover Your Who. We're going to dive into this incredible opportunity about self-discovery and learning what your identity really is all about in this third segment of our 3-part series with John Stix. So, John, welcome back to A World on Purpose.
It's good to be here. I'm excited to be here again.
I am too. So, in part 1, we kind of dove into your incredible origin story and really that moment when you were reaching for the doorknob, going into your own company that you built and realized you didn't really know who you were. That was such a profound story for anyone who didn't get to hear part 1. Please make sure you go back and listen to it, because that's really the impetus for everything that John is sharing on all 3 parts of this show, of this series. And then part 2, we kind of dove into how that self-discovery translated into the transformation of your own amazing company culture and all of the actual tangible results that you had out of that. So what we're going to talk about now in part 3 is what this all culminated into, this incredible new trajectory that you've taken this journey on around writing a book in 2019 called Discover Your Who, and how you're going to be turning that into an interactive digital curriculum. So can you kind of just start sharing a little bit about that? Because I think people are going to be very excited to learn about it and want to know where they can find it.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to the time when all this was going on and that we discussed in the company, one thing I didn't speak about at the time in our last one of the last two episodes was I was incredibly thirsty, for wisdom and knowledge. And after I had that kind of awakening that I spoke about when I took that trip, I just dove into reading and absorbing. I couldn't stop. I was a sponge. I was not really interested at all in modern day books. It's fine if one is. It was just where I was being led to was the old books, the old leaders, the philosophers, the spiritual leaders of the past. What enabled people to really connect? What holds people back? And then I really started to also then look at a list of people that we really admire as a society. And I called something, and just with myself, and is I wanted to look beyond the quote. And so then I looked at Mahatma Gandhi, and I looked at Oprah, and I looked at a bunch of Einstein, a bunch of different people, and I realized the challenges that they were faced, and how they weren't going through it, but how they were growing through it, and the profound wisdom and connection with whom they are coming out of that really motivated me even more. And then I realized, and I had some great friends in the industry that are in the happiness industry, and we have our great thought leaders that we all are fortunate enough to listen to. Whether it was happiness or vulnerability or compassion, kindness, forgiveness, everything that I would read about would all point back to one thing: identity. For sustained joy, for sustained happiness, for sustained equanimity and peace, how can you have that unless you know who you really are? And so I just dove into it. I dove into this identity. I didn't call it Discover Your Who. That didn't come till later. But what happened was as I was following my heart, everything became very organic. The thought of writing a book, for instance, my writings were all over the place. One writing would be about workplace culture. The next writing was about the power of vulnerability, or how you free your heart when you open up the key to it. And the stigmas that we wear as leaders, especially from my perspective, a lot of us men, and how we can be trapped by the very success that we create. And so I just dove harder, and then I realized that I was to write a book, and then the book came together with bringing the right people around it. And then we realized, hey, we have a platform. And people were saying, John, there's a full platform here, because it was being, as leaders were coming to me and I was taking them through it, I was seeing that the transformation in their own unique way was occurring in them, similar to what happened to me. So they're kind of like not steps that work for everyone, they're guideposts, because everyone's journey is unique. And then I realized, am I to share this message to the world? Is that part of one of the seeds of purpose that's inside me? Does that make me feel fulfilled? Am I doing it for all the right reasons? And all I can tell you is that when I get to share it and speak to other leaders, my heart explodes and I come alive, and it just feels so incredibly purposeful for me.
Do you find that you get more of a reaction from, well, let's just talk about the fact that you said that comment around especially being a man in that situation. We touched on that a little bit in part one. I did a talk years ago around the imposter syndrome, and I gave it to literally a men's group mostly. There were women in the audience too, but that whole concept of I'm really a fraud, I'm not any good at what I do. Someone's going to figure it out. Similarly to wrapping your whole identity in what you do and thinking that that's all that you are. So I'd love for you to speak a little bit about that for the benefit of men who might be maybe at that pivot point themselves of struggling with thinking that it's a weakness to feel vulnerable, or it's a weakness to feel like you don't really know who your identity is, or feeling like they're at that same sticking point. What would you say to them if they're having difficulty wrapping their head around that, that's okay for them to experience these things, and there are tools that can help them embrace and become empowered from it.
For sure. And, first thing I would say is I would just encourage you to know that you're not trapped. We feel that we're trapped, and it's the narrative that we're playing in our minds. But, through the power of really, going into whom we are and learning to express ourselves in a safe way, allows us to start having the building blocks to free ourselves. There are certain stigmas that society has taught us all. There's labels that we wear, and it's weight that's on our shoulders, and we get caught up in the hamster wheel. And so there's two things that are occurring. One is the pressures that we've put upon ourselves to create this, what we call success, and how we define it. And then we arrive at success one day, and things change. We want something other. We have different desires, different dreams, but everyone around us is saying how successful you are. Mm-hmm. And so they're reinforcing this place that you're at, but it's not truly what you want to be, who you want to be, or what you want to do any longer, but you feel trapped. Mm-hmm. Well, and then there's also the society that's saying that you have to be a certain way. You have to project yourself a certain way. You have to lead a certain way. You have to have a stiff upper lip a certain way. Mm-hmm. You have to wear this weight because it's what you do. But it's not true. One of the greatest lies I've learned is that we're all alone. There's 7.5 billion of us, right? And we're all going through something or have gone through something, every single one of us. And so we're not alone. And what society tells us how we have to be, we don't have to. Mm-hmm. And there's beautiful tools that leaders have been using for generations and generations and generations that enable us to not only learn who we really are and listen to that inner voice, mm-hmm. but understand what it means to us to bring it alive into the world that we're living. And in doing so, we're not only freeing ourselves, but we are reaching our fullest potential.
That's beautiful. And I think it resonates so much for, I think a lot of people right now are kind of questioning their lives anyway. I think COVID probably helped, facilitate some of that. What are some of you spoke about tools. So you did all this amazing research and learned what all these incredible leaders of the past had done and philosophers. How did you turn that into this platform? And what I know some of it you can't speak of because it's not quite ready to launch, but can you give our audience some of the ideas of the kind of tools that they'll have access to that help them tap into that understanding, discovering their who?
100%. First, what I'd like to say is on that thread is I fundamentally believe that we all 7.5+ billion of us actually have the very same purpose. Okay. So I personally believe that we don't have different purposes. I believe that we all are to just truly discover who we really are, and the things we create, the people we meet, the companies we lead. That's our potential expressed. Mm-hmm. And so, one of the first things I like to bring an awareness to is that we turn the arrow inward. And so for the first tool is realize that the answers that we seek are already inside of us because we are the authors of our own dreams. Mm-hmm. And those dreams are put into us. They're unique like the fingerprint on our hand. So why do we have them? Because we have unique skill sets to bring those dreams to life. Mm-hmm. But when we're caught in the hamster wheel of busyness, we never take the time to not only listen or think that we can do it. And then on top of that, there's a philosophy that I have is that, and here's some of the tools that we have embedded into the platform is, I truly believe that everything in this world was once a thought.
Okay, expand on that.
So the desk that my hands are on was before it was crafted into a desk was once wood. Right. And when it was wood and became a desk, it was someone's thought of creativity. And before it was wood that was just raw wood, it needed to be chopped down. And I feel like I fundamentally believe that everything in this world was once a thought because you can't have an action without the thought. And you can't have a word spoken without having first the thought. Mm. And so if that's the case, then can we not choose our thoughts? And I think that's something that's very important and very empowering, because we walk through life attacked by our thoughts and absorbing everyone else's thoughts. But we actually don't realize that we can take captive all our thoughts and choose the thoughts that we want to have, that are empowering for us, that care for us, that enable us to grow. And so what I believe is we start there at that level. Discovering you who is to discover what truly matters to you, then to choose the thoughts that enable you to think constructively about what the path that you're going to move on to. And then your thoughts lead to actions. Your actions eventually lead to habits. And your habits eventually lead to your values. Mm-hmm. And your values eventually lead to how people define you at the character level. And also, you have legitimately defined yourself to the public by having that alignment.
Wow, that's deep. And I love it. I love it because I think it's, a lot of times when you're trying to discover your purpose in life, it is a deep journey. It's not something that is flippantly explored. You're really trying to understand more about yourself and why you exist on this planet. So I think that's really great information. I'm curious what kind of stumbling blocks or struggles you had along the way while you were developing this. A lot of times I try to talk to people about, even though we're walking our path and we're doing our purpose and everything seems great, sometimes there really are struggles and like things that help us. What is it that we can do to learn to stay the course when we're kind of finding ourselves feeling like giving up if something is difficult? Did you experience any of that in the Discover Your Who process?
Yeah, for sure. There's always going to be obstacles. One of the chapters in my book, we've heard the term before, fear is a liar. Mm-hmm. I like to say that, if you're driving a car, fear is in your passenger seat, but never let fear reach over and grab the steering wheel.
That's a great metaphor.
Right? And we can learn to take doubt and fear and actually use it as a reminder, to remind ourselves of the positive. If I'm feeling fear, that must mean that I'm pushing myself. If I'm feeling fear, that must mean I'm not sitting still. If I'm feeling fear, that must mean that I'm trying to grow. Mm-hmm. And right? So when we feel that fear, we must know that we're pushing the envelope. And we can actually turn it around and say, hey, thank you, fear, for telling me that I'm on the right trajectory, that I am enabling myself, that I am trying to grow, that I am trying to empower myself and reach for my dreams.
Awesome. I think the greatest thing we can do, and I agree with you, is to not let the things that we can't control us. And one of those is fear, right? And
it's a big one. It's a big one.
It's probably one of the biggest, I would think.
It's one. I think so too. And judgment too, right?
Right.
We fall to self-judgment, and then of course judging others. A simpler way to talk about the philosophy really is, how can we know our why, or our how, or our what, if we don't take the time to first discover who we are?
And that's what the platform will help people do.
Yeah, and I like to take what I love to do is I love to deliver simplicity. Mm-hmm. And the first simple method is, if I may, I'll release it. One of the opening principles is, and so many people have said, John, this is the easiest thing for me to do and the hardest at the same time. Is step one, if you want to have a sample to try it, is don't worry if you don't know how to meditate. That's okay. You don't need to. There's no judgment or expectation with this ask of you doing this. Find a place that's quiet and try to still your mind as best that you can, and simply ask yourself this question: who am I? And repeat it. Who am I? Close your eyes. Listen. Journal what you hear. There's an incredible potential and wisdom inside all of us, but we don't take the time to ask the questions and to listen.
I think that is a beautiful place for us to wrap our amazing 3-part series with you. I wish we had more time. We're going to actually have to have you come back and do another series to walk us through the platform when it's released. So that's perfect place to stop, John, because I think that's where when your platform does finally come out, they can get your book right now, right? We're going to ask you to kind of like tell the audience what it is you'd like them to do with this Discover Your Who, and let them know a little bit about when your platform might be coming out. So why don't you share that with the audience, and then we can get them to start finding out who their who is, discovering their own who.
Yeah, for sure. The book is on Amazon right now, so feel free to discover your who and get that book. Would love it. And also the platform that I've spoken about is a true customized platform. It's holistic. That's going to have Discover You Who. All of our kind of social media that would normally be, on different platforms, everything is going to be encased in one platform. All of our content, all of the steps, and so we're going to be looking to launch that in the next 6 to 8 weeks. We're really excited about that. We've put a lot of work into it. Some amazing people involved. And again, it's kind of think of it as guideposts. Mm-hmm. It's guideposts to help you on this journey of discovering you who, but also inevitably a community, right? A community of people that are looking to turn that arrow, get off the hamster wheel, look to figure out who they are, and feel supported in that unique journey. And then look to release, that potential into the world. And don't we need that? I mean, we need that right now. The world everyone knows the condition that we're in. Right. We're also, there's a lot of suffering going on. But we can be that change. As Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. And I think it all starts with who am I?
I love that. Thank you so much, John, for sharing all of that. And I think it will be very timely and needed. I wish it were sooner than 6 to 8 weeks. But when that does come out, we'll make sure to let our World on Purpose audience know on your behalf. And until then, if people want to I'm sure that there's a way for them to opt in on a mailing list of some kind on your website. Why don't you let people know where they can find you?
For sure, yeah. DiscoverYouWho.com. Lots of information there. We'll be releasing more as we get closer to the platform release on iOS and Android. Also, you can contact us off the website. If you want to reach out to me personally, you can get me on LinkedIn. And I look forward to continuing this journey. And I'd love to come back because your podcast is much needed in the world, and I've really enjoyed it, Alyssa.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. I'm walking my dream. So
yeah, perfect.
My dream and my purpose. And everyone, I really appreciate you tuning into A World on Purpose, where we try to bring you the most inspirational and aspirational information and leaders that are out there living as what we call with purpose, for purpose, and on purpose. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you again. Have a great day. Thank you for taking this journey into A World on Purpose with our incredible guests. To learn more about our amazing guests and their inspiring purpose-driven work, please go to aworldonpurpose.com. Don't forget to look at our call to action of the week to mobilize your desire for purpose into action. A World on Purpose can be found on Apple Podcasts and all the major podcast platforms, and the video version can be found on YouTube. If what you heard today inspires you, please write a review and like and share on the platform of your choice. We'd love to also hear from you and learn your pivot to purpose and the meaningful work that you do that lifts humanity. Send your stories to info@aworldonpurpose.com. I'd like to thank our World on Purpose team for making this show a reality. Once again, I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris. Thank you for tuning in to A World on Purpose. I look forward to seeing you soon.